A new activism for New Earth. Our show today is with Regina Meredith, and we're going to be talking about the new paradigm of the new Earth. Let's not even use the word paradigm. We're going to be talking about new Earth. We're all hearing about the new economy, new health models, new financial system, new media, which of course you and I are both involved with, and now we're going to be talking today about new activism, which you've been speaking about passionately. So I'd like to begin with talking about, Daniel Pinchbeck has a new book called How Soon Is Now, where he speaks to the cultural change as primary to what is needed to bring in rapid change. And I love that concept because it's very simple. It's almost as if social media could solve a lot of our problems. And now, Regina, you've been talking a lot about the role of new activism and what that means now. So we had the old activism, which I guess you would call the 60s, and now we have a new activism we're going to explore today. So tell us how you think the two activisms are different.
In the 1960s, it was a very reactionary mode, a revolutionary mode. You had a whole new type of thought coming in really for the first time in probably hundreds of years if you look at it from an astrological level since the founding of America. And so you had events that were tragic that were happening, famously, obviously, the assassinations of President Kennedy, his brother Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King. These were events that punctuated the 1960s that people began reacting to, overlaid with the beginning of the Vietnam War. For the first time, people were savvy enough to say, wait a minute, that's not our war. Up till then, the Great Generation and all the great wars were just your patriotic duty. No one really questioned anything. I mean, maybe a few intellectual elites, but by and large, the population didn't question things. And in the 1960s, that changed, where this questioning at large, I don't want to send my son over for what's going on over there, not even knowing till decades later. It was a resource war and a manipulation from the beginning, even just on the politics of the day. So I don't want to do that. And kids were migrating, they were seeking asylum in other countries, most notably Canada. Music was coming out, the whole rock music scene changed, free love, sex, drugs, rock and roll. It all started changing in a really in-your-face way in reaction to what the previous generation and before had accepted. They weren't accepting anymore. This is different today. It's not
Absolutely. And I never thought I'd say this, but things were so simple then in the 60s.
Yeah, I know. We look at it.
We had like three-dimensional problems. Now we have what I'm going to call super compounded problems. We have dark energy, we have dark agendas which are coming to light, we have frequency manipulation. We have a compounded force on every individual, increasing our anxiety, increasing our level of survival here on planet Earth. Would you agree?
I do agree, and I would say that a lot of that was, we were even being subjected to it at the time, but we didn't know it.
We didn't know it.
And events were slowed down. Back then, when you'd have maybe a tragic event a month from somewhere in the world where some horrible thing had happened, whether it be a natural disaster or a mass killing, those were very rare events. And even up until roughly a decade ago, these were rare events. And I remember saying at the time in interviews with Conscious Media Network back then that we're going to be entering a time when people are going to become so loosely bolted together in their spiritual, mental, emotional complex that these would become weekly and even daily events. And we're there now. Now we can read it. If you open your headline, just turn your cell phone on in the morning to headline news. There's some tragedy, some horrible mass killing, some event that's happened probably in the last 48 hours now. And now we're already starting to become numb to that. We're exhausted.
We're exhausted. So with this hyper-acceleration, I think there's also a hyper-acceleration in the positive way. Would you agree?
I totally agree. These things, I do not believe it's an accident that these events are occurring the way they are, whether you're looking at it cosmically, spiritually, or geopolitically. The more the possibility of awakening to more of our true nature, I think is maybe the best way to say it, is made available to us. And it is available to us. There's no shortage of knowledge, resources, techniques for meditation, things that we didn't have in the 60s or even so much need then, are all available to us now. At the same time, the various top-down forces are exerting even more pressure to basically enslave our own sovereign status or will and just wear us out so we don't care anymore. Like I said, so those daily headlines just become another headline.
And we're numb to it.
And we're numb to it.
So with this, once again, with this hyperacceleration and the compounding complexities of the problems, I think it's interesting how you've been talking and we've had a conversation about how the solution is on a very intimate scale with the individual.
Yes, and inform me, because I haven't read Pinchbeck's book yet. What exactly is he saying in terms of offering how cultural change is going to change all these phenomena?
He thinks it's a simple matter of education. If for example, people resources and other resources were applied, just in mass changes, so many shifts could happen. That it doesn't need to come from the top down. It needs it's more of a grassroots approach, and that there are so many things available to us once we all become conscious of this and agree on an individual basis to change things, like becoming more giving, like becoming more conscious, pooling resources. His book is a beautiful example of it. I won't try to quote it, or I'm about mid-read through it, but he has some very viable solutions. Revolutionary, starting with individual.
Absolutely. I interviewed Andrew Harvey a couple of years ago, I think was the last time, and the subject was his new book called Radical Passion. And the way he framed it was that when you wake up at 3 in the morning, like with something gnawing on your mind, whether it's an injustice in your own family's life or it's an injustice in the world at large, that thing that makes you just cry in the middle of the night is the very opportunity to put yourself back into the world. And that can be collectively or individually. And to start allowing that passion to be ignited through the very things we're witnessing, through injustice, through the sense that we're being constantly sold to and manipulated and controlled. You know, that's enough for most people to have something to really kind of fight against or go into themselves and try to transform themselves past. But in fact, we end up exhausted most of the time, just numb and exhausted. And then it comes down to a very personal choice of how we're going to engage. And this happens even socially. With friends, for example, I noticed that more and more as the decades and years go on, you'll meet with someone, say for a cup of tea, and there's such a huge need to be heard and have your attention because somehow they're not feeling seen in life. And this doesn't matter who the person is or what their place is in society, how successful they are or are not. This is a trend at large where people sit and just kind of drain each other, seeking some acknowledgement that they even exist. Why is that?
Because that's what everybody so desperately wants.
Right, exactly.
And you know what? I think that fuels a lot of the introversion movement. I think look at my own life, and a lot of times I just pull the introvert card because friends can be so draining.
Right. But they're draining for a reason. You know, and you could argue gossip's always been around. And actually, there's a new study. It's good for the brain and Alzheimer's to gossip.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
And by the way, not all friends are draining. Let me go back and say that. Of course.
But we do notice this. We do notice this in life, but there's an increase in it. Instead of kind of a just gentle give and take or exchange between people, it's often kind of this needy, cloying kind of exchange that happens because people are feeling exhausted and drained themselves. They're trying to just get a little energy where they can. It's subtle, that nobody means any harm by it, but this is a form of taking when we're already living in the world of takers that's been created by a world of takers, trying to take from us. Whether you're listening to, Ancient Aliens and Eric von Daniken's story, or whomever, Zecharia Sitchin, about being a slave species here to serve another species, and thus, essentially a battery source for the machine at large. You can take it that low, or you can just look at it on more subtle levels. You open up your computer in the morning and turn on your headline news. You'll get a headline, then you're sold to. Here comes a pop-up. And another pop-up. And you scroll through trying to read the rest of the article, and you have to go through 10 ads before you can even finish an article. We don't have any idea of how subtly exhausting it is to be constantly sold to and taken from.
It's really amazing.
It is. And yes.
On every level, when you look at it that way. So what's a good solution for that?
Well, that's where the name of my talk that I'm giving in Sedona on the 21st The
21st of
September.
September.
Yeah, it's called Givers Unite. And really what it is to start looking at what our unique possibility is. What is that thing that makes us cry in the middle of the night? What's the very thing, if we had the energy, we would stand up and do? And what's stopping us from doing that? It can be a small contribution. You could say, I want to, shoot, I could have volunteered to bake cookies for the school's bake sale. I could have done that, but I was too tired, so I didn't. Or I could have listened to my elderly father for a little while longer, but I just had other things to do, and it was taking too long, so I didn't. These little ways in which, out of our own exhaustion, we've stopped giving. And not only that, we even stopped giving to ourselves, our partners, and our kids, and our friends, out of exhaustion, like you. You go into the introvert mode.
I go into the introvert mode. And you know what? I'm thinking also about when I was in a spiritual community, we always talked about always being, quote, in service. Mm-hmm. So is this another way of looking at just, it was like a way of living, like you were always a yes when you were asked to help, and you were just in service to humanity. And so that was like one of the big tenets in this spiritual community I was in. Is this similar to that?
I think it has parallels to it, but it's not exactly the same. This requires a much more honest, deeper evaluation of what your truth is. Because sometimes you go into the mode of service because it's expected of you. That's not actually something that may be refining you on an individual soul level, because all of this is about refinement of the individual, of ourselves. Anything we do in connection of or in service to others is only part of that process. So digging down to the truth of why you want to be in service, what you choose to be in service to, not just saying yes to everything, which is absolutely exhausting again.
Well, you know, it's like a house of cards because of the competitive nature of everything, of everyone in survival mode. That's competition on every system available, from the ecosystem to our individual life supporting systems. And then from going from that competition, nobody wants to take time to give because they're too busy trying to just like keep their head above water to get. Yeah.
Everybody's busy trying to get
cycle.
Their piece of the pie. That is how our society has ended up exhausted. And we're buying into it. We're buying into another person's idea of what life is supposed to look like, what success is supposed to look like. You got to take a lot to try to reach the model that they put out on TV and in the magazines and social media. No one's going to meet that. In fact, the more recent studies show what social media is doing is actually making people feel even more depressed because they have this illusion that everyone's life is big and they've got to go out and somehow make more and get more out of their life to compete with their friends or their family. Everyone's just putting up their highlight reel. That's all it ever is.
100%. Time Magazine's cover this week is about depression. Here's mainstream media, depression at an all-time high.
Yes.
I think it was something like 38% of people, I don't want to quote the number, but it was ridiculously high. And they have a new drug, surprise, called ketamine that they are proposing that will, what is ketamine? They're proposing that to be the solution to the worldwide depression problem.
Well, they're probably the ones that sponsored that article appearing.
I was wondering.
To begin with. Okay, I had the I would say privilege, you know, it was, I don't know if it was a privilege or misfortune, years ago, of being privy to funding through a major university that deals in agriculture, medicine, and many other areas of technology and medicine in general. And because I was on an expose story about some poor practices that were leaving essentially radiation available to the public via needles and various kind of throwaway things that weren't being disposed of properly. So anyway, it was that kind of a story. I was an environmental reporter at the time. But in doing this, the person that turned me onto the story gave me the list of the funders for all of the different studies going on at the university. In almost every case, the funder stood to benefit from the outcome of that study.
Wow.
Now this is well known in those circles. The public isn't aware of it. So they hear another new study on whatever is the next best. You have to know that the study says that because there was a vested interest in it saying it.
All big pharma.
Big pharma. So I mean, I was just kind of joking when I said they're probably the sponsors of whoever wrote that story.
I think that actually is a brand, ketamine.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know anything about those drugs, honestly. But the thing is, that's only really a symptom of what I was saying earlier. This mass exhaustion, which leads to this kind of separation, this anxiety that your life isn't good enough, that leads to depression. And there's only one way out, and that's us. We totally hold the key, and it's really, literally, one decision away from this very minute, and it's literally moment to moment, any moments you choose. Just one thought away. These are tiny, tiny little acts where you reverse the flow and say, okay, I can take the time, to hear Dad out. I know he told me the same story last week because he's starting to lose his memory a bit, but I can take the time to make him feel good and hear him out just a few more minutes. And you just relax into that, and your motive is only one thing. I'm here to give a little bit of myself to that other person for these minutes. And you keep doing that, just one tiny bit at a time. It doesn't have to be big things. And there starts to be a recovery process internally.
Well, that creates a tidal wave. It reverses the flow of the really super fragmented energy, which we're all being fed also. So when you slow down, that just reverses fragmentation, which is one of the downsides of all the social media and the media hitting us all the time. So that reverses that slows it down, so we can begin to take, I'm looking at this as a step. Right now, let's step onto the soil of New Earth with virgin footprints and walk out there, and let's, like you and I, we're here now. And so, Regina, we're having a conversation, and you're taking the time to listen to me and listening. I'm trying to get your attention. I want to tell you a story, and you're actually giving me that attention and listening to it and taking the time. And I'm listening to you. And this frequency, we've just had a frequency adjustment, even as I'm looking at you right now. We've just adjusted frequency into what I call the kind universe. It's like we're accessing the kind universe. Now, that's all it is.
It is.
And you can just slow down and feel it.
You can. And the Hermetics have a position on this, which is that the greatest gift you can really give someone is your attention. Just give them that focused energy from you to let them know that they are being seen and they're being heard. And a lot of this really neurotic, compulsive, selfie generation, all the generations are involved in it now, but type of culture that we have going on is all about taking and drawing attention to. And they're saying, just stop. You, as an individual, stop. Turn it around. Give that other person your full energy, even if they're needy and they're bugging the heck out of you, and see what happens.
Beautiful. And as we're talking here in New Earth, and we are taking the time to listen to each other, where does our anxiety go? Because I want to see a new Earth without the anxiety level. So if I'm listening to you and giving my attention, my anxiety, I'm not really aware of it at the moment.
Right.
It's an anxiety eraser.
It is an anxiety eraser. And one of the things I'm doing at the Creative Life Center on the 21st is I'm taking the entire audience into a very deep meditation on our own energetic dynamics, where we're flowing our energy out and where unconsciously we're taking energy and don't even know it. These subtle little things that happen, where we feel we've been taken, where we've had the great exhilaration of giving to another human being. But it's going to go down, we're going to go deep, it'll go for a little while, and people will come out understanding their personal give and take dynamic much more deeply. And if you think you can do better, if you think there's more in you, you can give a little bit more, that'll show itself, and then you have an opportunity the very next minute to do something. We always think it has to be, you have to, put some kind of badge on. You have to be part of something to, be giving into the world, doing your part in the world. It's way more subtle and simple than that. It's listening, it's being honest, it's being truthful. These are rare commodities, rarer than the most rare earth minerals now, are just giving our genuine, undivided attention to someone and telling the truth.
I think that's going to be a profound exercise for people to experience on their own. And I'm going to add a third category of giving too much away too also. Was that one of your categories?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so people will be able to experience that on an individual basis and then feel what it feels like in a collective group setting. It's going to be amazing.
It is. I went through one brutal exercise. This is not like that at all. This is very permission giving to explore. Because if we're finding we're taking too much for ourselves, that's only because of a depletion of some kind, which we'll recognize in the meditation. Say, oh, I didn't know I was doing it. Now I see why I was doing it. Now you can make a choice. But many years ago, I alluded to a second ago, this kind of brutal model, I ended up by accident, more or less, at the last minute in what appeared to be the beginning of Landmark and these kinds of group dynamics.
I remember.
Where you take a few days together and they have all these brutal exercises. And I remember the very first exercise, which was fascinating, is there were 17 people in our little group. The exercise was one person would go down the lineup of the rest of the group, one person at a time, standing about a foot from them, looking deeply in their eyes, and you had to say whether this person was a giver or taker.
Oh, wow. Confronting.
Oh yeah, I mean, really confronting it. And it was fascinating to see there were certain people in the room where virtually everyone that went by them said, you're a taker. Just looking in their eyes and feeling their energy. Well, of course it made some people cry. This became the beginning of their journey. And people who were stealing and taking energy and trying to grab all the attention became much more giving by the end of just a few days. So I have to give it credit. It was brutal. A lot of brutal exercises.
Are you doing this?
I'm not doing that in this conversation. I mean, in this evening together. It's not about that. It's not about public humiliation and being forced into another role. It's about the gentle identifying in ourselves of where we're taking other people's energy and where we can very easily just have the joy of feeling that reversal of that for just a second. Even.
It's a new earth mastery. It's a new earth mastery skill.
It's on the most basic level. There are energies that destroy and there are energies that create. And the reality is that, think about if you're a taker, and what's mine? What's next for me? How can I get this out of that person? Those are usually not your most creative people. The most creative people have to be coming from a place of giving. They're receiving inspiration and they're attempting to capture it and give it back out again through whatever their craft is. So essentially creation of all kinds is an act of giving. And we're looking to create a new reality. How can you create if you're sitting there wondering about what's next for you?
Well, this is the foundation of the new earth change, to go from toxic to regenerative.
Yes.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And so it sounds very simple, the notion of givers unite, and there's another part to that, and that is we're tired of being taken to the cleaners, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and misled, misdirected, right?
Confused.
To start coming together with the intention that each of us is going to give something into the situation, give something into someone else's life. Just to make the decision to say, I'm going to do one little thing each day. Just a little smile is all it can take sometimes. Where someone's feeling really crummy, just a little smile. You've infused a little bit of giving energy, a little creative energy into someone else. And it sounds trite, but without doing it, there is, we talked earlier about, should this be about gratitude? Gratitude's kind of after you've received, so to speak, after you've experienced, and you're giving your gratitude for that. I'm saying create the circumstances for which we can be grateful. It's up to us to create them.
Beautiful. I would like to bring up this new book called Letters from 500. You've probably seen it. It's about somebody from the future, supposedly from 500 years, coming back and talking to us. And one of the jewels in the book, whether you believe it's a time traveler or not, is that this period of life that we're living now on Earth is called the age of the ego. And that 500 years from now, after the ego has been dissolved, it's a cooperative society. So it's kind of the same as we are now, but if you take away the competition and put in cooperation, so the movement you're talking about here is along the lines of reaching that.
It's the beginning phase, and
it's the beginning phase
we won't go there.
Dissolving the age of ego.
Exactly, because as much as we are driven by external influences to believe it's all about us, and on one level it is, it's our personal responsibility to live the cleanest, best life we can. It's actually not all about us. We're one tiny little face on this planet. We're a tiny little planet within the cosmos. It's about how all of it works together. And I agree. There's a book I've been reading that I just love. It was written in the 1990s called The Robes by a woman named Penny Kelly, whom I'll be interviewing soon. And It's the same thing. It's these beings, these little beings in little robes that apparently showed up in her kitchen and started giving her glimpses again of the future. And the same thing started coming out that in fact, what's so beautiful about the book is that it detailed exactly what we're going through right now, right down to these daily terrorist incidents.
Wow.
It detailed all of it 30 years ago. And they're saying this is to break down society to such an extent that it's irrecoverable, and we have to turn to our greatest resource, our own minds and hearts and souls, to start rebuilding it in a collaborative way. No more of the top-down patriarchal way. It won't be like that anymore.
Well, I have to tell you, I really look forward to your talk on September 21st at the Creative Life Center in Sedona.
Mm-hmm.
I want to invite everyone to come and participate, because what I'm excited about is everyone getting the chance to experience the frequency of giving together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not that no one is a giver and doesn't experience that, but with a high intention and a highly led exercise to do that, I think it's a grand social experiment, if you want to call it that, and that will be profound.
The end point in the meditation is absolutely beautiful. I've led it many times, and the experience, people go away feeling so incredibly blasted open and connected to everything, and anybody can do it. This is all accessible stuff. We just have to go along for the ride with an open mind and heart.
I love it. I love it. So Regina, let's walk around New Earth some more. We're barefoot, we're walking around, crisp air, birds chirping, the water. Everyone has clean water and to drink and clean air to breathe. And then let's go look at a city and let's go look at some structures and let's see what we see.
Well, first of all, there is probably no greater giving entity than the earth itself. Look what it's giving constantly. It's constantly putting forth its best and has to be absolutely relishing any kind of joyful interaction we have with her offerings, right? It's a loop of giving. The giving itself brings up energy within your own being, within your own spirit, within your own psyche. The joy of just giving itself, no less the fact that the other person is being filled up. Imagine a world where we're committed to giving every day something of ourselves to others and feeling the passed on effect of having that energy rise up within our own being and feed us simultaneously.
And we know and live the truth that giving is regenerative.
Absolutely regenerative.
And youthening and all the things we really want.
Right.
It's an avenue for getting all those things.
Well, you think of the curmudgeonly, pinch-faced little banker, trying to get money and put a little money in and get a lot more money out of it and so forth. There's an archetype there, right?
Absolutely.
And we look at that, and that's not what we would be relating to for the new earth. I think that's pretty much the perfect representation of the old earth. Even us individually trying to put a little bit into something to get a heck of a lot more out of it than is warranted, there's some flaw in that thinking, in my opinion.
Yeah, so here on New Earth, creativity rules over control.
Absolutely. And creativity is by virtue. Creativity is giving. Giving is a creative act.
Beautiful.
Even in its tiniest form. Creativity doesn't exist in a pinched-taking mindset.
No, it doesn't.
Mm-mm.
And so we're walking around and we're looking at a city, and in the middle of the city is a beautiful garden.
Mm-hmm.
There's some actually in Canada now. There's these, have you seen these cities that have urban spaces that are now farming?
And imagine there's going to be a spectrum of the population that just waits to get up and get their fingers in the dirt and grow flowers. It's not like someone has to volunteer, and on a schedule. That's a direct expression of someone's passion.
Which is what we're all going to be doing.
Right.
Which is what New Earth is about. We're all doing our passion. That's the economy.
Yeah.
Your passion is your currency.
There are people who love plumbing. They want to fix your plumbing issues. It's like, this is a tricky one. I'm going to get to the bottom of that one. There is nothing that won't be provided in a world where people can give their unique passion and genius to the world.
And sovereignty is king.
Absolutely.
The individual sovereignty. We have digital sovereignty over the new financial system. We have human rights sovereignty as what we are here to do. We have sovereignty as far as how our health works. Did you know that now you can print your own medicine? They are making 3D printers with inks that have simple compounds. That's some health sovereignty right there. formulas that were kept from us that are now revealed that are so simple. In technology, in free energy, in medicine.
But it requires the courage to unplug from the old systems that are taking our health away en masse and individually.
In the New Earth, we went through the portal where we got that.
Exactly.
We already got that.
You got it.
It's built in. We walk through like a car wash, and that gets washed away.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was at an event one time, and I think Barbara Marx Hubbard was leading this little meditation into the future. And you had to look at what the world looked like in the future. And I saw it as I was in the future as a woman living in this little dome, just my own little dome, and it had exactly the things I needed, and it had this lovely screen that allowed me to be connected with the rest of the world wirelessly, but without wireless toxicity. So however that happened in the field, the quantum field. But our little domes were movable, so whatever your body was needing by way of a new environment or a new set of herbs or food group, you could just, your little dome could just be sort of floated over into that area to feed yourself what you needed from whatever that region of the world was. It was really kind of, it was very kind of whimsical and utopian, but absolutely beautiful.
Was that a meditation?
Yeah.
And that's where you went? You know where I went in mine?
Where?
I had a white mountaintop layer with a giant crystal in the middle, and I was living with Chewbacca.
Well, there you go.
That was my paradigm. So Regina, I love walking around New Earth. We're never going to leave. We're here. Let's just consider us here. And one more thing about we talked about gratitude. And we were going to talk about gratitude in the show, and we went, no, this is entirely different.
This is the precursor to gratitude.
The precursor, but this is the precursor to, we're still on New Earth walking around, you and I, bare feet. Yeah. The waves are coming in, the birds are singing. And I think gratitude ascends to appreciation. And
Absolutely.
And I think that would be a wonderful conversation for our next get-together, Regina.
Absolutely.
To talk about how gratitude is ascending to appreciation.
Absolutely. And also gratitude is such a high frequency in and of itself, like an act of giving. The frequency itself begins healing. Doesn't even matter what you're grateful for.
Joe Dispenza says, gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. Absolutely. Isn't that perfect?
It's perfect. I love Dr. Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Dr. Joe. So we look forward to seeing everyone in Sedona, September 21st. It's a World Views production, and it will be at Sedona Creative Life Center. See the link below to get some tickets. And we also look forward to having you at the Conscious Media Festival this year. And we also look forward to working more as a media partner with Worldview Productions. It's all about everyone partnering together these days. And I like pooling resources, and I love what they're doing, and I'm happy to be involved in all of their future productions in whatever way I can.
Absolutely. And because you're talking again about a very giving group of people we're talking about here.
Very giving.
Everybody is willing to show up and give what they have into it to make something beautiful happen. This is really increasing.
We're motivated to see the change.
Absolutely.
What else is there to do?
You got it. Good being with you, Giselle.
You too, Regina. Lots of love. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Giselle.
Beautiful. So much more to explore with you. I look forward to it.
Yes. Thank you.